this is the first time that we have spoken with Bill Bender of Sporting News, connection made by a mutual friend, Mike DeCourcy, who I know just celebrated 25 years at Sporting News. That is awesome. I'm glad that we're going to have a chat for the first time. Bill, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, Mike is the cornerstone of what we do at Sporting News. 25 years. Our publication's been around forever. I think he's the best college basketball writer in the country.
Great.
And I do a little college football behind him. Now, we do argue from time to time, but I'm an Ohio guy and he's a Pittsburgh guy. So, that's going to happen, but he's the best. I would say that.
Other than his distaste of carrot cake, I can't think of a thing that I don't love about Mike DeCourcy. I wasn't going to start here, but I know you just wrote about it, so I will go back. Because I talked about it on Tuesday. It's interesting that week one of this college football season ended up being the swan song for Lee Corso. And in many ways, and I think Mike probably would agree with what I'm about to say here, in many ways, Lee Corso, to a slightly lesser extent, is to college football what Dick Vitale was, or is really still, to college basketball, in that he was a guy who brought people into the tent, fans into the tent, just because of his personality. Now, I mean, I'm just your thoughts on Corso's exit from being one of the frontmen.
Well, the word gets overused, but legendary is what I would say. Going out in Ohio, and I was at Ohio State, Texas, and I've put it this way. So when he made the headgear selection, you're in a press box. There's a lot of commotion going on. And everybody stopped. It's quiet.
Yeah.
Everybody watched the Jumbotron, and, he makes the picks. Then even better was he wins all the games. It's just incredible, right? So, it's just absolutely incredible. And I'm in my 40s, and, you kind of grew up in your teens when game day phenomenon took off, and he's largely responsible for that. I would totally co-sign. He is what college football, what Dickie V is to college basketball, and I love them both.
Bill Bender, Sporting News, is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show at Bill Bender92 on Twitter. All right, you were at Texas, Ohio State. Arch Manning sucks, right?
Well,
that's what I was told.
Yeah. Well, we built him up to term. So you're on the wrong five-star quarterback. We're on Bryce Underwood for the next 48 hours. So if they lose to Oklahoma, then we'll move on to somebody else. But up against a really good Ohio State defense that disguised the coverage as well. I looked into it this week. I just gently remind people, here's what I think the problem is. I'll run this by you. I think we prop Arch up against two-time Super Bowl winner Peyton Manning, not freshman Tennessee Peyton Manning, or redshirt sophomore Eli Manning at Ole Miss, and not the guy that knocked off the Patriots twice. So he's got room to grow. Their schedule's really soft over the next 3 weeks. Yes, the inaccuracy was evident and some of those things, but let's reserve judgment till they play Florida. He's going to have plenty more games against ranked teams. They play Georgia later this year. That'll be a big one too.
Bill Bender, Sporting News, is joining us here in the Adam Gold Show. I don't disagree with that at all, but it's our nature in with just the sport of football. We have people losing their minds over preseason NFL games. We watch a game in football, and I think there are certain fan bases in other sports that do this. I cover the Hurricanes in hockey here. Every game is a referendum on everything to certain people in the fan base. But in football, almost across the board, people take a game and they say, well, he's no good. That he's a bust. Like Arch, he started a couple of games last year, right, when Quinn Ewers was out. And he looked good running. He was okay. But there was nothing there last year that would have said he's the best quarterback in college football. But his last name is Manning, and that's enough for people.
Yeah, and here's something to think about with Underwood and in making this comparison. I looked this up. 24/7 Sports there's been 26 five-star guys since five-star QB since 2014, and the only four. You'll love this. The only four that haven't that started on day one. They came out and started on day one. It was Josh Rosen. It was J.T. Daniels. He played for like 5 schools.
Right.
Dylan Raiola and Bryce Underwood. I mean, even Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams, they started as freshmen, but not right away.
Right.
So I think that's the difference. Of all those guys I just mentioned, the one that I thought when I first saw him play, I'm like, all right, number 1 pick, it was Trevor Lawrence. And I know it's been up and down in the NFL with him,
right.
But the way when you saw him play in college, right off the bat, I was like, yeah, that you know. So I don't know if I feel that way about the other guys.
Well, I agree with you, especially about Trevor. Trevor, I mean, when you're 6'6", 235, and you can run the way he can run, and the weapons that Clemson has or had at the time, you're going to look much better. By the way, just in an ACC sense, I think I'm still dealing with that with Cade Klubnik. I'm still waiting for what I have been told is there. I've seen it against lesser competition, haven't seen it against better competition with Klubnik, and I've been not a believer that Clemson is one of those teams. I don't know how you thought about the Tigers going into week 1, but what do you think about them coming out of week 1?
Well, that when you knock down the LSU loss, LSU's defense is nasty.
Awesome.
That was my big takeaway. They're fast, and I was like, wow. You know, defense was the story of week 1. Now, Clemson, with the expectations, they've got to beat SEC schools. That's 4 straight losses.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to win the playoff, you are going to run into an SEC school, right? Now, what it did to me was kind of level out the ACC picture, where last weekend was the weekend where Florida State and Miami kind of stood up.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Falika's stat that, you know, Florida State, Miami, Florida have been in the top 15 probably since Corso was making those headgear picks in the early 2000s. So that's good for the ACC. I think Georgia Tech Clemson becomes a much more interesting game to me next week,
mm-hmm.
because I'm going to try this one. Haynes King player means more to their team than Haynes King does. You know, with the way he runs, he's tough. They take a cue from him. They could theoretically beat Clemson next week. Can you imagine if they're 1-2?
No, I agree. Last year, ACC football was no good. We all agree. We all understand that. It was no good. But I think ACC football this year might actually be pretty good. The Miami team I saw Sunday night looked like a team that, if they can overcome Mario Cristobal, who I thought actively tried to lose the game late, if they can overcome him, they look like they've got all the pieces to contend. Other their pass defense might have been a little light, but if they can get to the quarterback, they can mitigate that. Florida State looked like they dominated Alabama in the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. And like, if Georgia Tech is good, I think Louisville's pretty good. Like, they might have some depth to the league down to like 7 or 8. And I'm interested in Duke, Illinois this weekend and what the Blue Devils have. I mean, we'll talk about Carolina in a minute because that was an embarrassment. But I think there's a lot of good football in the ACC.
Duke, Illinois is on a weekend where it's light. It's admittedly light. That is a huge game to be. Live in Big Ten country. A lot of people think Illinois' playoff team this year.
Mm-hmm.
Darian Mensah had 389 passing yards last week. Ball barely hit the turf. And Duke quietly won 9 games last year. So, and they're a good underdog, by the way. They 3-0 against the spread as an underdog at home with Manny. So not that people pay attention to that, but you know, it's a really interesting spot there. That's one that I'm really going to be paying attention to in terms of, if Illinois loses, then you're kind of looking for, okay, who's that team behind the Big Ten? You just rattled off like 8 or 9 teams. I don't know the Big Ten. I could say that about the Big Ten. I could say 3 right now. You know, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon.
Right. After
that, you start having questions.
Yeah, and Bill Bender is joining us here from Sporting News here on the Adam Gold Show. You mentioned that the marquee game of the weekend, the night it's going to be on ABC, Michigan and Oklahoma. You know, if we go back 30 years, I mean, we don't have to go back that far, honestly. But I mean, these are 2 of the blue bloods of the program of the sport in Oklahoma and Michigan. And I'm not sure we know a ton about whether or not each team is really good, or are we contractually obligated to rank them at the beginning of seasons? What's your sense of what
Right.
the answer is?
Well, that's a great call because I think this is a game. Got to wait for there's a couple things I'm watching right away, and one, when Oklahoma's on the field, does that offensive line hold up? Well, Jumpman is good; he'll make plays, and he's getting compared to Baker already. But can they block Michigan? Because Michigan's defense, they're going to come after him. Yeah, they're even without Jayshon Barham for a half, they're coming. Other side, Bryce Underwood, he had a good debut. He's got a cannon. There's no doubt. And but can he pitch? But what I mean by that is if you look in that 10 to 19 range, can he make those tight throws against Oklahoma's defense? It's not New Mexico. And can he do it on the road? So I'm fascinated by this game. I think there'll be the overreaction either way will be either Bryce Underwood is the greatest quarterback ever or John Mateer Heisman frontrunner. And I think Mateer could theoretically do that. And if he wins and they look really good, and as you know, they kind of clear the deck for the NFL in week 2. They always do.
Yeah.
He'll be the big talking point on Sunday morning.
Yeah, week 2 generally is. I mean, we had a great week 1. I mean, people talked about it as the greatest week 1. Look, the television ratings were through the roof. You had Texas, Ohio State was 16.5 million. There were 3 other matchups on ABC that were just over 10 million or mid like 10.5 or a little bit above. Even 6 million people tuned in to watch Texas Christian practice in Chapel Hill. What was your takeaway from that debacle?
Stunned in some ways, not completely. The way I've been phrasing it. So if that would have happened, if North Carolina would have played Richmond and Charlotte first and won by 31-14, 31, and we're sitting there, and then in week 3 TCU blows them out, it's less of a big deal. It's because of the production behind it.
Yeah.
And that's expected with Belichick. I mean, that's very real. I was at ACC kickoff. I saw how many cameras were there to see him. And, with the transfers, yeah, it's a lot. I think the one thing that surprised me is not the blowout. It's that, we got in the third quarter, and I know it's garbage time, but Max Johnson looked all right. Mm-hmm. If you have a team full of transfers, you got to play a veteran quarterback. I think. And I mean, Gio, I'm not saying Gio can't be that guy, but maybe a timeshare there until they figure out who that real quarterback is. Lopez had 2 completions first drive, didn't have another one until the third quarter, and that's not all on him. But I thought Max Johnson looked pretty good.
He did look pretty good. The funny thing is, I remember the opener last year in Minnesota, and Max started that game, and yeah, he was injured, and it was a gruesome injury. But I thought Max looked like he couldn't play in the first half. Like that, what I watched was not the same player that I watched play the first half when the Tarheels took on Minnesota and won that game, if I'm not mistaken, a year ago. To me, the biggest, I don't know, red flag is not the right word, probably, but was that, to me, North Carolina looked like they didn't know how to line up defensively. They were so easily blocked. I know we could talk about, tackling was bad. Like, they weren't really in position to make that many tackles. And when they were, the tackling was bad. But boy, that first play in the second half, it was touch football. It's a touchdown. And he went 75 yards through the middle, out to the outside, gone. They looked a little bit unathletic to me.
Yeah, that was, as you were saying that was the first play that came to mind. You got a chance to make some adjustments at halftime and get back in the ball game, and that was a knockout punch on top of the defensive turnover, the defensive scores, and it was bad. But where they go from here, I mean, we'll see with Charlotte. That line, speaking of lines, dropped 9 points, so I don't know that there's a lot of faith.
Right?
That's crazy. I pay attention to the movement, and it's like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I do think they'll get it together on some level, but it does take away from this idea that because Bill Belichick waves the wand that they're suddenly a 9-win team. But I still think that they will get better as the season goes on. I don't know what better means, if it means 6 wins, 7, but I think they'll win their next two before they go play UCF.
Boy, I've been talking about this all week, and we'll close on this. Bill Bender, Sporting News, joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Well, we won't learn if Carolina's good because of Charlotte. Right. But we might definitively learn if Carolina's bad. And that's the only thing we are definitely going to find out if it happens that way. But if they go down to Charlotte and win, as you 34-10, I don't think anybody's going to have any idea really. And certainly through Richmond, we'll learn against Central Florida when they go to Orlando in the fourth week. Yeah, and they'll be up against a well-coached Charlotte team. I am an Ohio University graduate. Tim Albin led Bobcats to a MAC title last year, so he can coach. And that's one of those things that we'll find out this week. Like you said, if they somehow lose or it's like 16-13, then those things you said will be confirmed. But they'll come down to that UCF game. UCF struggled a little bit last week too. Yeah. You'll have that with first-year coaches, but I think they got beat so badly that Belichick will be completely radar unless they put up a fight or lose. If they lose in the next 3 weeks or beat or compete with Clemson, those are the two things that can happen. Wow. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about losing to either of their next two games and coming to work the next day. Actually, it'll be fun. Not that I want them to lose. I want them to do well, but in terms of engagement, yeah. Bill Bender, Sporting News at Bill Bender 92. Thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon, hopefully. Hey, anytime. Give me a call. Thanks so much for having me. Take care. You got it. Bill Bender here.